Have you ever felt like this when you post something with no reactions? It's not the best, is it? For the best reactions, you need the best, most unique product or idea. And when it comes to cookies, Mo Sweets is the best there is. Whether you buy some for yourself or you gift them to others, you'll always get the perfect reaction. With these cookies, you get the love of a homemade item with the professional quality of a seasoned baker. They make the perfect post and the perfect treat. For more reactions, order more sweets. Order online at mosweetstx.com and find them on Facebook and Instagram. Salvador Dali once said, "Intelligence without ambition is a bird without wings." If that's true, hire ambitious management and make the smart choice to watch your dreams soar. If you're an up-and-coming business person and don't know where to start, if you need a tax professional, or if you just want a free evaluation of your current life policy, please reach out to Amber Avis and watch your dreams take flight. She's available on social media. Hello and welcome back to Beat the Clock. This is the podcast that challenges your notions of time management. So I do so by interviewing others who are using their time wisely. If you don't know me, my name is Michelle Rubio-Garcia. It's nice to meet you. And I sit down with guests and I create and host and do all this whole shebang with 4 questions. So number 1, who were you? 2, who are you? 3, who will you be? And then at the end, we directly talk to you as a listener and we ask, how can we use our time correctly to avoid clocking out? So as you can see, all of those questions have an emphasis on time. And all of those questions are really designed to show you that each moment connects to the next. So if you think your time is worthless, it is actually a moment of opportunity. Every second, guys, is an opportunity for growth. And this podcast's mission is to ask, are you taking advantage of those opportunities? So again, maybe for the wrong audience or someone who doesn't want to grow, this is going to sound pompous, but I am here to change your life. I don't need to change it drastically. I just need to plant this seed and hope that something from these interviews stick. So I take that job pretty seriously and I hope you're enjoying the content. So we are in episode 4, believe it or not. It's gone really fast. And if you're a first-time listener, thank you so much for trying this out. And if you're a fourth-time visitor, you've stuck with us since the beginning. So I super appreciate you guys if you're coming back. I know we're having a very earnest, humble start, but it's going to pick up. I feel it, and I'll work towards that. So if you know me, you know what I'm talking about. So really quickly, since we're in episode 4, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors who are Ambitious Management, 1802 Social House, Mo Sweets, and the Laredo School of Contemporary Dance. They are some of the sponsors who have bought in on this mission early. So I appreciate you girls. It's a bunch of girls and I love you. But you do not have to be a small business owner to support me, guys. Or you don't even have to be a girl. Where are my fellas at? Consider becoming a Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/beattheclock. And there you can get behind the scenes content of this production. I also kind of want to start like a vlog of like my struggles with fitness and, mindset exercises and all that good stuff. You're going to get freebies and decals and shirts and all that good stuff depending on what level you choose. And that's eventually going to go to market. So you'll get it not for free, I want to say, but you'll get a good bang for your buck if you become a supporter. And then eventually, guys, the goal of this thing and this community is to have 2 kind of portals of communication. So number 1 is a Facebook group, and that's where like-minded individuals can meet and collaborate. And then the second one, if it gets big enough, which I hope it will faster, is to have a monthly Zoom call, and we can give every meeting a certain theme, like finance or fitness or relationships. And I'll try to bring in a guest speaker and all that good stuff. So again, I'm really trying to create community. And by investing in this podcast, you're investing in the mission of effective time management and the importance of living a purpose-driven life. if you spread the word and we get more people, ultimately you're also investing in yourself, guys, because I'm trying to provide resources for us to grow. So, with that being said, let's talk to Celia Villarreal, who I've known since college and who has a lot to say about this subject. So, she is a licensed attorney in the state of Texas. She received her Juris Doctor from the University of Texas School of Law in 2018, where she served as the editor in chief of the Texas International Law Journal. She has been a prosecutor in Brownsville, Texas, and she practiced business immigration law in Dallas, Texas. She is currently preparing to move to Seattle, Washington, and is also learning Russian. Whoa. And she already knows English and Spanish. And I'm sure she's conversationally fluent in others. She's great. And her hobbies include learning about the world through reading and traveling. So I really enjoyed this conversation, y'all. Celia was even so kind as to say that if any Laredo law student hopeful, so potential applicants, right? If any of them have any sort of questions, she offered her email. So I'll post it in the Instagram, the YouTube caption, and all that good stuff. I'll post it everywhere. And I just really appreciate her. She's left an imprint in my life since I've met her. So I'm really excited to share her brain with you. And I hope that you'll benefit from it. Let's see what she has to say. And we are starting now. So this is Beat the Clock, and this is the third episode. I have Celia Villarreal here. She is a lawyer. She was Miss
Hello.
Texas 2012. And how are you, Celia? I haven't seen you since our Tammy U days.
I'm doing good. Actually, I was Miss Laredo, not Miss Texas. I did not win that pageant, but
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
but
Okay,
I am
cool.
a lawyer now.
Yes. And
Doing well,
like,
thank you.
yes, and even when you were in undergrad in your first year, you said you were going to be a lawyer, and I've always respected how well you've done at just kind of really meeting that goal. And so, what I'm doing for every promo flyer is I'm obviously giving the title and the name of the person, but then underneath in parentheses, I'm kind of like writing how I interpret that person. So for you, the phrase that came up for me was modest model because yes, you did modeling, but I mean you're like a model person, I feel, and you're never bragging about it overtly, and you may, how can I phrase this, you are ambitious without having to brag about it. You were not a pushover, you were not a doormat, but you were still like, I'm gonna do this, and I really respected that balance about you. So that's why I brought you on, and I'm really happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah. So you've done quite a few things. I mean, you're saying I didn't get Miss Texas, but I mean it's still hard to get Miss Laredo. So you've done a lot of things where it seems like it's kind of impossible, really. And especially coming from Laredo, a lot of people tend to think, "Ay, nombre," like that's the culture here. And so I want you to kind of reflect on that process. I know we're going to follow the script, but I'm going to probe your brain a little bit just so people can see the journey. I mean, everyone wants the results fast, and the whole point of Beat the Clock is that we have to use time correctly because things do take a while, and so every second matters. So I'll start with the first question. Who were you before you were the Celia that you are now?
So in high school, and I guess all my life before high school and too, I was always really shy. I always worked hard, but I was afraid to take risks. And I kind of took a big risk when I ran for Miss Laredo, and it was my first time doing a pageant, and I won. And I was like, oh God, what did I
Awesome.
get myself into? It was a really fun experience. I didn't do any other pageants after that because I wanted to focus on my education. And not that doesn't mean you can't do it while running for pageants, but for me, I felt like it was a better balance to just focus on my education. But that was sort of like a breaking out moment for me where I realized, like, hey, like it's okay to go out of your shell. It's okay to, believe that you can be more than what you thought you could be. And so that was kind of like a big changing moment for me. And in college, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer and I stuck with my guns. And I
You really
remember,
did.
working at the Bridge newspaper with you, and I was like obsessed with it. I really wanted to get into law school, and I specifically really wanted to get into UT law. And it ended up happening. I applied to UT Law and I got waitlisted. And I remember when I got waitlisted, I was super sad, but I was also really, really excited because I was like, hey, like I'm one step closer to my goal, maybe. And so what I did, and what I think helped me a lot, is I sent a letter of continued interest to the law school. And I told them, hey, I'm really interested in your school. If you accept me, I will 100% be going to this law school. And I explained the reasons why I thought I should get off the wait. It's kind of nice because on my graduation day, I was taking a nap after graduation from TAMU.
Mm-hmm.
And I received a phone call and I saw it was a 512 number and it was the law school and I got in.
Yeah.
And so that was a big, yeah, that was like one of the best days of my life still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like that
Yeah.
you're
And then,
honest about that because people assume like getting waitlisted means it's the end. Like it's a nice little turn down or rejection, but it's not.
right. And I think it's a lot of it boils down to what you make of it. I think me sending the letter of continued interest, and I even, took a trip to Austin. I visited the law school. I met with the admissions officers. I think that made a big difference. It showed them that I'm committed and that I was willing to take the extra step in order to get what I was aiming for.
And did you have to Google that kind of letter? Because I had never heard the proper title, letter of continued interest. Did you have to search that or how did you discover that?
Yeah, I totally Googled that. I did not know that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nice thing about today. We have the internet and it's such a great resource. And I feel like a lot of people in my parents' generation are like, oh, you kids are always on your phone. But not that we're kids anymore. Everyone knows we're not kids.
Yes. No, it's okay.
But I feel like for a lot of people, maybe it's that. But I think for a lot of us, we're really using the internet as a tool to continue learning and to continue growing. And it helped me learn a lot about applying to law school. It gave me an edge. I didn't have anyone in my family that had been a lawyer before. And that might have been something that people who had family members that were lawyers might have known to do. But because of the internet and because I spent the time researching what I needed to do, I think that made a big difference.
Yeah, and that's something that I show my students. They asked me one time how to spell a word, and I said, I'm never going to tell you how to spell a word. You're going to need to Google that. And then they were like, hi, ma'am. And I'm like, even if you don't, they're like, how do I know how to Google it if I don't know how to spell it? I'm like, there's an option where you click on it and you just say the word and it'll look it up for you. And they were like so mind blown that that was an option. And you're right. I mean, the internet is honestly the biggest equalizer. And even with this podcast, I'm reaching out to people that I am interested in. I'm reaching out to people I want to grow from. I'm reaching out to people that would give me information that maybe the internet doesn't give you. So even though the internet didn't give it to me directly, it allowed the portal to get it indirectly. And I just think that it's so underused and it's so I don't know, underutilized. I can't believe people don't do more with it.
Right. I totally agree. Yeah.
And
And speaking of the internet, oh, go on actually.
no, go. You're being interviewed.
Oh, I was going to say, my fiance and I, we started learning Russian through the internet, and that's something that I would have never thought of. And I know it's kind of going off script talking about what I'm doing now.
No, it's okay.
But that's something, like with the internet, like I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. I actually have a Russian keypad on my computer, which you can see little Russian
Wow.
characters.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah. And
gonna
it's
tell everybody
probably, the
they're gonna
internet's
have to.
awesome.
Sorry, it's because of the lagging. But I'm gonna tell everybody
Yeah.
look at the video on your episode specifically for that little moment.
Perfect.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and Russian is so out there compared to the local languages here, and so you guys could like we. I mean, I'm not saying to do it for that purpose, but you could be talking trash in Russian, and nobody would ever know.
That might be one of our goals. I'm not going to say whether it is or it isn't.
And so, okay, yes, you got the title of the pageant, going back a little bit to the question on the first try. But even then, I'm sure there was a lot of prep. Can you speak more into that?
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the main things that set me apart was I really focused a lot on the interview part of the pageant. So the pageant has, of course, like the modeling aspect, but even before you get on the stage at the beginning of the day, you have to stand in front of a panel of judges and they ask you questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was one of my strongest points because there were obviously a lot of beautiful, talented women that were competing for the pageant as well. But, and not to say that they weren't well spoken, of course they were, but I think that was one of my strong points and that really helped me out.
And did you have to hire a coach for that, or did you just again use the internet? What was your toolkit there?
I looked up a lot of YouTube videos. When I ran for Miss Texas, I ended up using a coach, but the first time around, I didn't have a coach that I remember. But I think like, I practiced with my mom. We would print out sample questions and I would stand in front of my mom in heels and like a tight dress, which is
I don't know what happened. You muted. The video and the audio went off.
I
So we
agree.
got you back on. We had a little outage, but we're back. Yes, it's okay. You're good. So what were you saying?
What was I? I was talking about the pageant
And
and
being in
about,
heels.
oh yes, and it was so much more awkward to have to do the interview in heels and tight dresses. And it was an interview dress, but the pageant interview dresses aren't like the normal interview dresses.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit more embellished. But yeah, that was really nerve wracking, and you had to stand in front of them too. It wasn't sitting down face to face. So I think doing that really made a big difference in my life. Also, with being a lawyer, you have to stand up in court in front of a judge a lot of the times in heels and a mini skirt, or not a mini skirt, a pencil skirt.
Right, which is
And I think,
tight. Which is tight.
yeah, they're tight. They're not comfortable.
Yeah.
I have switched over to some suit pants. That's helped a lot.
Hmm. And that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask how the modeling prep connected to your legal career. So, even for the interview, let's say, was there an interview process for the law application, or?
There was not specifically one, but the dean of the law school and some of the admissions officers did go to TAMU because
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to get more students from TAMU because in Laredo there's not too many people that even applied to UT Law, and so they wanted to encourage people. So in a way, like, I met them, and I'm thinking that I made an impression on them because it was soon after I met with them that I got off the wait list too. So in that sense, yes, I had to be poised, I had to look presentable, and I had to speak in a way that, where I made my point across to them that I was really interested in the school and that I was willing to work as hard as I could to be the best lawyer and representative of them as possible.
Awesome. That's great. I guess I'm going to probe you just a little bit more on that prep for law school, because one time I had a student, I'll never forget, my first year, and I didn't mean to kill his dreams. I didn't. But he was like, "Ma'am, I'm going to be a lawyer." And then I said, "Great. What are you doing right now?" And then he was like, I was like, "Are you taking any law enforcement classes?" And he kind of stayed quiet. And then I was like, "Do you know that there's an exam called the LSAT that you need to take?" And then he was like, and like I guess it was starting to sink in that he was a little ill prepared. But again, it wasn't me bringing him down. It was me saying, "Hey, you got to get on it like now. Law school doesn't happen that time you apply. Law school happens all the prep beforehand. Like that's what law school entry really is." And then he was saying, "Nah, don't worry about it. And then when I get into law school, I'll be rich." And I don't know what. And I was like, "Do you know sometimes you have to do pro bono work for free?" And he was like, "What?" And he's like, "No, but I'm on the wrong side of this thing." And then he made a joke or whatever. But yeah, how long did you have to study for the LSAT, and what's all that like? And I mean, I know that information is available online, but I want to hear your personal experience with it.
Yeah, of course. So law school, preparing for law school really starts with your grades. You have to have good grades in undergrad. And I think another really important thing is being involved and showing that you can juggle more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for LSAT prep, that was terrible. And I'm sorry to anyone who has to take the LSAT because it's a terrible experience. But and I took it twice.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I took it, I canceled my score because I freaked out and I was like, "Oh God, I didn't do as well as I thought I did," and I canceled my score. And then I took it again, and I got the score that I wanted, thank God, or close to that I wanted. I wasn't right where I needed to be, but I was close enough. And I think my grades, my letters of rec, and my extracurricular activities really helped push me over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to LSAT prep, what I started preparing for the LSAT, I want to say about 6 months before the first exam. And we're in Laredo, so there's no LSAT tutors. A lot of people that went to school at UT or A&M or one of the bigger cities, they had personal tutors on their campus. We didn't have that at TAMU, which
Mm-hmm.
is fine. So I was like, okay, what do I do? So again, I used the internet as a resource and I figured out like what's the best LSAT prep tool. And at the time that was Power Bible series. And I don't know, like I'm telling people I totally recommend the Power Bible series, but for people that are studying for the LSAT right now that may be listening to this, do
Mm-hmm.
your research on it because it might have changed. I took the LSAT like, I don't know, 7 years ago now. Oh
Yeah.
God. And so I just bought these books and I created a schedule for myself, and I would study certain subjects on certain days. And then the exam was going to be Saturday morning and it would run from, I don't even remember the time, from let's say 8 a.m. to noon.
Mm-hmm.
And so every Saturday I would go to the university. I would sit in the room where the test was going to be administrated, and I took a practice LSAT test. And then I kind of relaxed Thursday, and then Sunday I would go over each of my answers and say, okay, why did I get this right and why did I get this wrong? And I feel like even when you got the answer right, you want to like really make sure you got it right for the right reasons, because you don't know what you're going to encounter on test day, and you do a good test on the mock exam, you might not do a good guess on the real exam. So I
Right.
feel like doing the practice exams really made a big difference. It helped psych me out for the test. I was like, oh, I've been in this room before. I've taken the test here in the exact room. And you can find out what room you're taking it into online. So
And
that was my,
like, did you have to make a special arrangement for that, or it was easy access?
it was easy access. It was open. It was in the Student Success Center, like in those upstairs computer rooms. That's where they had
Mm.
the LSAT administrated.
Oh,
It was
okay.
fun. I was able to get in. I don't know about now.
Cool. And I mean, I'm so glad that you're being transparent about that, that you took the LSAT twice, because people think you don't get it one time. Ah, no, hombre, it's not meant to be. And I mean, even for me to get the dance team to have a dance class at my school, I had to get PE certified. And I mean, I passed the English part with flying colors, and I honestly didn't study. And it had a writing portion, so people get very intimidated by that. But then I failed the PE exam by 2 points. Oh my
Oh
God.
no.
And I was like having an existential crisis. And I was like, how can I not pass a PE exam? Like, but some of the questions were so random. Like I studied what was available online as well, but then they were asking about tennis and they were asking about bowling. And I was not prepared for those kind of questions. So there was a part of me that wanted to be like, no, I mean, I tried, and I'm not going to travel, and I'm not going to pay again because I had to leave. They don't offer this test here in Laredo that often. But then I said, you know what? If I really want to pick up the program, I need this resource. A whole semester of class is going to make the world of a difference for these girls. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I had to take it again, and I'm glad I did, and I don't regret it. And I
And
don't feel
I
shy
didn't
about
know that a
sharing
lot of
that.
people from Laredo don't apply to UT Law.
Yeah, I had spoken with the dean about it. And even when I was in law school, I met with him and he was like, it's sad because I feel like there's a lot of really good applicants. And it's not just Laredo, but the Valley as well, in McAllen, Brownsville, all that area. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, we just don't get that many applicants. And, sometimes we get ones that meet the caliber, but I feel like there's so much more. And I think, I remember when I was thinking of applying to law school, I told people, oh, I want to go to UT Law. And they're like, oh, but you could just go to a law school and that's a little bit closer. You don't have to go to that law school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they meant well, but there's like this push, like why go the extra step? But
Right.
why not go the extra step? If it's a dream of yours, if it's a goal of yours, just go for it.
I love that. You gave me chills, literally. uh, no, yeah, I really think like we ask the wrong questions. And that's something that I talked about with Amber in her interview. I said, everybody's asking, oh, what are they doing? Or like you're saying, what could go wrong? But how about asking the right questions and really getting some ownership or autonomy in that regard? You can say, what if everything goes right? What if I actually become a lawyer? What if I can like do whatever I want? So I really like that you mentioned that again. Again, I got chills. So that was a nice little thing you went on.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned in law school is like the worst thing that could happen is someone will tell you no. And when they tell you no, they're not going to tell you that you're the worst person ever. It's normally like a kind no, like, oh, we had a pool of, a lot of talented applicants, but no. But nothing, you don't lose anything out of it.
Right.
Whereas you could gain everything from just trying.
Right. Like I applied to an MFA program in Holland, and like with my body insecurities at the time, I was like, "There's no way." But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna trust myself that I've done enough with the program, and that'll the accolades in that realm will help me, right? And you like exactly what you're saying. They said the pool was very competitive this year, blah blah blah. Like yes, it hurt, it stings, but I mean, I was so proud of myself, and I have it here, and I even posted about it. Just try, like just try. The fact that they even know your name, the fact that your name is on that roster, like you're already halfway there by just throwing your name out in the bucket.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Okay, so we're going into question two. So now it's who are you? And so I know now that you have JD, but what are some values and habits that you have learned from your past self that you're carrying into the present?
So I've learned my whole life, I feel like I was like toward kind of building towards this moment, like, oh, once I get into law school, everything's going to be perfect. Then once
Hmm.
I get like once I graduate, like everything's going to be this perfect world and everything's going to be wonderful and I'm going to, be so successful. And I have been, I've worked as a prosecutor. I worked doing immigration law right now in transition. My fiance and I are getting ready to move to Seattle. So I'm applying in a job market during a pandemic. So, um, I, the law, I've learned that your job isn't something that's going to make you by itself happy. It can bring a lot of happiness, but one thing that I learned is that we build these goals for ourselves, and that's great and that's wonderful. But there's so much more to life than just your job.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of my life I was kind of running towards that goal, and once I passed it, I was like, what now? And
Hmm.
so I've had to kind of reevaluate, like what else do I like to do? And that's been sort of what I've been working on right now.
Yeah, like honestly, when I got the national title for Villarreal, the first one ever, I knew it was happening. I spoke to my parents beforehand, and the one thing I said, it was just us three. I said, "How is this moment going to change me? Like, I'm scared I'm going to react differently, or I'm scared of the weight it's going to come with." I was just thinking. And then the moment they said we won, I didn't feel it. Like I didn't feel that ecstasy that I was expecting, and that, like you're saying, like everything was culminating to that. Everything, it was a buildup. It was supposed to be triumphant. When I was in drill team, it was a triumphant moment to win, and it wasn't. And that was like the very first red flag. That was like, it's time to go. It's time to go. Like I put too much stock in that one goal, and so it's been a real process for me to kind of accept that dance wasn't going to give me that fulfillment, because dance always saved me, honestly. And it still is. I mean, this is part of that exploration, like what lies beyond what we're writing down on paper.
Right. Yeah, and what I've done is I feel I've always liked reading and I kind of put that on pause for a little bit and I've gotten back into it. I've been, I read a couple of books a year. I try to, always have a book that I'm reading. Right now I'm reading two. I'm reading a bio on Stalin and random
No,
and
it's
also
that.
because I'm learning Russian. And I'm reading In Search of Lost Time. And
Mm-hmm.
I really like In Search of Lost Time. It's by Marcel Proust. It's, I think, one of the longest books ever. It's a 7 books in one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of about just nothing and about everything all at once. And I've learned a lot from it because it's just this one guy's life in the turn of the century France. And it's just a lot of nothingness. But then, like, when you finish like a volume of it, you're like, wow, there's so much in that. And life is just kind of like that. Like you're moving along and you're trying your best and you keep going, and then you kind of pause for a moment and you look back at what you've done and you're like, wow, like, all of that, like, nothingness or everyday mundaneness, like, really was something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I really like that you actively show your interest in reading, which is partially why I reached out to you. I don't feel like, honestly, I think you're the only one that posts when they're reading books, other than, now that I'm thinking about it, Shami, she also does. But I mean,
Shani
it's,
does read a lot of books.
yeah,
I
but
get, like, I look at her book list a lot. I'm like, what is she reading?
yeah, and so I get really comforted by that, because sometimes I get very sad that I can't read as much as I want to. And then people talk me out of my love for reading, right? They say it's boring. They say it's hard to focus. They say it's not as good as a movie. And we all know that's wrong, right? And when you guys post that stuff, it really comforts me that I am looking into the right hobby. And
Yes.
something that was very telling for me was that I learned recently that every CEO has like a very central habit that they form, and it's reading a book a month or a week, or, well, yeah, a week, because there's 52. So
Something
they,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
they read 52 books a year. And if all of these people are all extremely wealthy, there's a power in reading. You get access. Again, it's about access to information. The internet, big data companies, like they are profiting off of information. Information is a new currency. Information is the highest commodity. And because we don't read, um, we are ultimately leaving ourselves to be exploited, I would argue.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is randomly a lot of pushback to reading. I remember one time I was sitting in an HR training and there was like a 30-minute break. And so I was reading a bio on Isabella la Reina Católica because we were going to Spain at the time. And so I was like, okay, like let me read about one of the coolest queens, from Spain ever. So I
Hmm.
was reading a bio on her, and this man was sitting next to me, and he was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I was like, and I told him what I was reading, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I could feel him staring at me. I just kind of went back to my book and I was reading. And then he asked me, he's like, "So why don't you just like watch a movie about that on Lifetime or something?"
Hmm.
And I was like, I was pretty offended because I was like, "You're insinuating that like I'm just reading like like a dramatic Lifetime event version, which like if you're into that, that's totally cool." But he just assumed that, and I felt like it was really sexist, and it made him mad that I was reading, obviously. And I told him, well, I'm trying to read for historical accuracy. I'm trying to learn, so that's why I'm reading this. And I said, if you could please excuse me, so I can get back to my book.
Hmm.
But I think there is a lot of pushback to reading, and it's really weird. But I'm very fortunate because my fiance reads a lot. He gets mad if he doesn't read his 200 pages a day. He reads
Wow,
so fast.
that's good.
So it, I think it's also important to have someone that supports what you do. Like, like my fiance, he's like super into me reading, and we both read together, and it's something that we can talk about. And it's changed me a lot as a person in ways that I can't even describe. I feel like, oh, like I can sympathize. I've been part of the French Revolution. I've, been like in Victorian era England, being an oppressed woman there in that time. I, can sympathize even like with a dictator like Stalin because I'm reading his biography, learning about like what his childhood was like and how, different things like that. I think it just helps you become a better person, and because it helps you understand the world and understand other people better.
Right. And like my students thought it was super tacky, but I would put a map of the US or of the world, and then I would like pin little strings and put like novels there. And they're like, man, like, why are you doing this? It's like so random. I was like, it's not random. Like, even if you feel like your circumstances don't allow travel, you can access other worlds literally by just flipping a page, and you harness the imaginative quality in your brain, and that's something that's really going to be an asset to you in the future, and what regardless of whatever field you choose. It's a potency that you can tap into.
Right. And I actually organize my books by country. So I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, these are like my France books and these are my Spain books. So whenever we're taking a trip to somewhere, I try to like, okay, like collect all the books. Like when we were going to Spain, I read like that bio on Isabella, I read Don Quixote. I read a Carlos book that was really good. And I try to do that every time I travel. I feel like it makes my travels more, it makes them richer. And even when I haven't gone to the places yet and I want to go, I try to read up on it because I feel like, oh, like once I go there one day, like, cause that's my goal, to travel to as many places as I can, it's going to make the experience so much better.
Right. My husband and I read the Anne Frank diary before we went to the house, and yeah, like it totally, and it's like you're there. You know, it's like you're Anne Frank in that house, and you see everything with a totally different eye. And I really stress that. I stress that words can change the world, and if you're not exposing yourself to high quality words, then of course you're not gonna tap into what could be. So and yeah, I have a poster here literally by my bookshelf. I don't know what it says. A person who won't read has no advantage over a person who can't read. And that always stayed with me. So yeah, a lot of, even if I don't do like novel reading, I'm always looking at the internet. I'm always like purchasing resources. I'm always getting things to better myself, and it's all again through words.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many other ways, like, like podcasts, because we live in modern times, it's awesome because you can watch great films, you can listen to amazing podcasts. Like, I'm listening to this podcast called Revolutions right now, and I'll just play it whenever I'm like, washing the dishes or like folding clothes. And it's like, oh, instead of just like losing that time, I'm gaining more time and I'm multitasking and I'm learning while I'm doing boring chores around the house or cooking dinner or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So I just really think there's something to that. And I really think that people, again, should really consider reading. So I'm going to move on because I'm being attentive to the time. So for the future, I want to ask you career goals, obviously, and then we'll jump into family relational goals. So if you want to just comment on where you think you're going to be in terms of your legal degree or journey,
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah. So right now I feel like what I'm open to a lot of different types of opportunities right now. And I think that's something that this pandemic has instilled in me because I used to be like, oh, I have to do this type of law. But because of the pandemic, I'm applying to jobs in another state that I'm not from. And I'm like, I'm applying to different types of things. And I feel like it's beneficial. So I'm trying to be open to different types of things. So right now I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I know I'm going somewhere and I know that it's going to be great whatever happens.
Yeah. And again, sometimes that surrender to the unknown makes all the difference. It'll take you to places you didn't even imagine, and they could be better. So don't worry about that. I know that. I mean, once you actually get a vision, I know you're gonna go tenfold. So I'm not worried about you. Something that I wanted to talk about was marriage and children because I'm sure you just said it. Even when you're reading, you get sexist comments thrown at you. And like for me, I remember I had an administrator that laughed on the phone when I answered the telephone and said, "Hi, this is Miss Rubio-Garcia," and he laughed and he was like, "Dude, just drop it. Like, I mean, come on, you're Garcia now." And just little comments like that. Even in my wedding dress that night, everybody was looking at my husband's family, and then they were looking at my family, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's the battle of the genes. What are your children gonna look like? And when can we see?" And I mean, just constant pressure. I had a student last semester that every single day told me to get pregnant. Like any little thing that happened in class, he was like, "Ma'am, yeah, it's time. What are you waiting for?" So I want to just kind of probe your brain on that and kind of assess how waiting on that is something that's been beneficial for you.
Yeah, and I think with marriage and children, there's no right or wrong answer. If you meet the love of your life at 21 years old and you're like, I'm ready, you get married, you have kids, or you don't, or you have kids before you get married, whatever, however you do it, I think as long as you're comfortable with it, it's totally fine. I don't want to judge women who go through that earlier, but I think it's been beneficial for me to have waited on marriage. I met my fiance in law school, and it was nice that, I didn't commit to anything before law school because I ended up meeting the most wonderful man I could have met that was perfect for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we get along in so many ways. And it's really wonderful because I'm not so worried about getting a lot of heat like from either side of our families. Maybe my side more because it's the Mexican thing, I guess, to be more into like, oh, when are you having babies?
Mm-hmm.
But his family's been really wonderful about not pushing anything. And we also decided to not get engaged right away because, we wanted to be at certain places in our lives when we did. And we made it to that point, and he stuck to his promise. He proposed to me, and I'm excited. We're getting married February 6th. So,
Yay!
yay, we just set the date.
Yes, awesome.
um,
Congratulations.
and I do want children, but I'm going to have them when I want them. So we're going to get married, and I definitely want to do some more traveling before we decide to have children. And we've agreed that once we do have children, we're not going to let that change who we are. I feel like childhood, a lot of people, when they have children, kind of become children themselves. They're like, oh, we have to only watch like, kids shows, and we have to only go to Disney World, which is totally fine if that's what you're into. I don't want to judge anyone, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that we want to do. So I want to, give my children rich experiences. I want to have had experiences that are rich in themselves so I could be a better mother and better person, for better role model for them.
Right. Like, I think if I would have caved to that pressure to have children earlier, I would have been a horrible mom, to be honest. Teaching really taught me patience. Teaching really taught me empathy. It was very hard to realize, but people are not as driven as me. Might think slower, read slower, learn differently. And all of those intangible kind of observations definitely will make me a better mother when that time comes for me as well. And you're right. I don't want to stop traveling. My husband and I always say, we're going to take our children to our vacation, right? And it's not a vacation plotted around them, although every once in a while, right? You want that.
Of course.
But yeah, it's our experiences, and it's like adding another player to your team, right? So we're inviting our teammates to travel with us. I kind of look at it like that.
Right. Yeah. We had this one professor in law school who he had a kid, and he would just take his mother-in-law along, and the mother-in-law she would get tired. So she would just take care of the baby, and they'd go off and go dancing in Argentina or wherever it was that they went. So
Hmm.
I think we want to adopt something similar to that where we maintain who we are, individuality, our desire to travel and explore the world, and keeping them in tow, whether we, wait for them or when we have them, they're going to come along.
Yeah, and I mean, I think something like that too. My suegra, mother-in-law, for those of you that don't speak Spanish, she's super ready, and she says if you want to leave them here and you take a solo journey, you guys, that's totally great. So I like having that resource. I really think that that's like wonderful of my mother-in-law to offer, because sometimes even when you take children and you want it to be about you, I mean, they don't have the patience you do. They don't have the bowel movements that you might. So it can still be discouraging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I can't speak on behalf of my future suegra, but I know my mom was already like super excited, and she would totally just take care of them for a bit. And I also, with kids and traveling, I want them to have experiences, but I also don't want them to take it for granted and be like,
Right.
oh, we went to Paris last week, whatever. I
Exactly.
want them to appreciate it because I didn't get to go to Europe. I didn't go to Europe until law school. We went to Italy for a month the summer after our second year of law school. That was my first European trip, and it was with my fiance, who was my boyfriend at the time. And I really appreciated it. And I read up about Italy as much as I could, and I tried to, read every plaque on all the museums. I did not succeed. It's too
Mm,
much.
yeah,
But I feel like I was excited for it, and I didn't take it for granted, and I don't want them to do that either. So it's kind of like finding that balance in the
exactly. Yeah.
future for them.
Right. Because, yeah, some kids will say, oh, it's not a big deal, but it's a huge deal. And especially from both of us, who are coming from a place of kind of being self made and self taught, and kind of self-reliant to make these trips happen. It's something so important to realize. And again, there's a lot of value in exploring somebody else's culture and how they think, because it makes you a kinder person, I think.
I totally agree with that. Traveling has really helped shape my experiences as a person and how I view the world.
Yeah, and like my students think I'm probably like a hippie saying, we're all connected and we're all whatever, but we are, and we just kind of let others dictate where these perceived boundaries lie. So I don't know, traveling taught me that. I can't really articulate it until you experience it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to articulate it either, and that's kind of why, like, we, are learning Russian right now. Like, my fiance learned Spanish. I already knew Spanish, but I when he started learning, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna perfect it."
Hmm.
And so I, took the course with him, and I kinda helped him with the pronunciation, and when we went to Spain, I feel like it made the experience so much richer, and, we wanna go to Russia, so that's why we're learning Russian right now. So I'm hoping it'll make that experience richer, and we've spoken to like some tutors, like, because he has a Russian tutor online. He's a little more advanced in Russian than I am. And every time he mentions like, oh yeah, like we really want to go to Russia, they're like, oh my God, that's wonderful. And they're so excited and they're so passionate about their country. And I think that's beautiful to see from a lot
Hmm.
of different places, how passionate people are about where they're from.
Yeah, I think Spain had the most prideful people. I don't know if that was your experience, but man, like they just walked like they knew that their land was like beautiful and they just owned their cultural identity. And having that pride um, there in Spain kind of made me more prideful of being from Laredo. I kind of didn't like being from Laredo. I didn't know how to process this kind of hybrid culture. And when I went to Spain, I went with many Caucasians who didn't know Spanish. And that was the first time in my life where I ever felt grateful for Spanish. And that was such a nice realization to have because I wouldn't have had it if I wouldn't have traveled.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's so important to be proud of where you're from. Like I'm proud that I'm from Laredo, and I think a lot of Laredoans, like, we go through a period where we're like, oh, Laredo, like it's so backwards, it's so whatever, but it's also a beautiful place, and I'm very happy to be from here. My fiance thinks it's wonderful. It's the best Mexican food he's ever tried,
Hmm.
except for, I guess, Mexico City, but he's like, there's some places in Laredo that compete. He
Yeah.
particularly loves Palenque Grill and Taco Palenque.
Yeah, and like when I went to Spain and they took us to this, like I think you went there too. I think you posted about it. The churros in some place. I can't remember the name right now off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah, they were I like the ones in Mexico City better. The
Right,
churros?
right. I felt like
Yeah, 'cause they were sweeter.
such a snob, but I told the tour guide I was like, I don't like this. Like the ones in Laredo even are better, and it was like
Yes.
boom, like it just set off something in me that I was like, Laredo has a lot of good, and I didn't feel that before. So I'm really grateful, and I think everybody should travel.
Yeah, totally, and I there's this one place in Spain that a friend of mine recommended to me. I forgot what it was called, but it was like a Mexican taco place in Spain. And it was like, oh, this is like just like what we get in Laredo. And it's like them in Spain, they're like emulating what we're doing here. So it must mean that there's something here. And I think it's beneficial for Laredoans to be proud of Laredo. And even if you're not living here, to try to promote it and support it in any way you can.
Right. And this project for me is that contribution because Laredoans can produce good content. Laredoans have a lot to offer. And I think the only thing that's stopping Laredo from being better than other cities is that we live in shame and we live in fear of showcasing or owning our identity. So there's about 3 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. So,
Awesome.
what advice would you give to our listeners for them to avoid clocking out on their dreams?
I would say that they should expect to fail. It's going to happen. It's going to hurt. You're going to cry. It's like when you're learning how to ride a bike, you're going to fall and it sucks. But if you keep go if you keep going, it's going to get better, and it might stay terrible for a while, but you have to keep pushing towards your goals. If not, you're never going to realize them. And I guess that's sort of my advice, just to keep going forward, keep hoping, never give up on yourself, even when it seems, like it's never going to happen. You just have to keep trying.
Right. And I think people are just so scared to take that first step because once you experience your first failure, you're like, okay, but I didn't even expect to get noticed by X person or X company. So it shifts the momentum and it makes you go, okay, well, who else can I approach? And will they reply? And then it starts this whole momentum of curiosity and of exploration.
Yeah, and I think you don't know what you're capable of. I read a bio on LinkedIn, and he failed a bunch. I don't have to go into details, but what would have happened if he had given up?
Mm-hmm.
It would have been terrible for America. And
Right.
we're still suffering from the terribleness that he tried to correct. And, we need to keep pushing because you don't know what you have and what you're capable of and how you can change the world.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm all about that. And I'm so glad we got to speak, Celia. You're really just inspiring me. I admired you as a writer when we worked together. I mean, we were like, um,
I admired you as a writer too.
we were editor in chief and co, right? So I really appreciated that I was so close to you because, again, it's just I don't see ambition that often, and I don't see anybody actualize their ambitions into something concrete. So I just really appreciate your time. I really respect you, even if we don't talk every day. I brought you on here because, again, I love who you are. I love what you represent. And I'm going to tell all of BTC to wish you a happy wedding and a happy marriage. And in whatever you do, Seattle, France, Russia, wherever you go, I just really wish you the best.
Thank you so much. And likewise to you, I'm so happy to have been invited to be on here.
Okay, everybody. So we are wrapping it up. And is there anything else you want to say, Celia? I don't want to rob you of that.
Just thank you so much and keep going forward. Don't give up.
Yeah, I really think I'm onto something here. And just by probing your brain a little bit, you're already a part of this. Like wherever this goes, like you were instrumental in that. Know that. So thank you to everybody
Thank
for
you.
listening. And we're clocking out here, but make sure you don't in your life. Thanks. Are you visiting Laredo, Texas in the near future? Just because you visit this beautiful border city doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to a few corporate hotels. Book 1802 Social House to unlock the possibilities. You can cozy up in a suite for a unique downtown experience. You could rent office space to create your own history while working in a historic home. Or you could rent out the space for your passion projects. The possibilities are endless. Book your stay now through Airbnb or find them on Facebook. Confidence, style, and artistry. Unrivaled dance education yields exceptional dance results, and this is the LSCD experience. The Laredo School of Contemporary Dance has established a nearly decade-long tradition of excellence, setting itself apart from local and national dance studios by offering a unique, unrivaled curriculum of diverse dance styles. And now the question is, are you ready to experience it? Find them on Facebook and register for summer courses now.